There we go. All right, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I declare that all of council is here, so we have more than quorum. And I'm going to ask Councillor Cloutier to read the land acknowledgement.
I would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe under the terms of Robinson-Huron Treaty Number 61 of 1850 and the Williams Treaty of 1923. We commit to acknowledge, learn, educate, create opportunity, honor sacred places, and take actions toward real truth, reconciliation, in support of our commitment to walking the path together in respect, peace, and harmony for future generations.
Thanks very much. I have a motion. Moved by Deputy Mayor Armour, seconded by Councillor Renwick. Be it resolved that the Planning Council agenda dated May 10, 2023, be hereby adopted as printed and circulated with the deletion of item 4.3, Robin Fortunato, regarding the telecommunications tower proposal at 27 Hoodstown Road. Comments? All in favor? And that's carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? All right, seeing none. So we have 3 deputations to begin the meeting, and they all are to do with the second item on our agenda. I ask that they speak respectfully and are limited to 10 minutes. So with that, our first presentation is Peggy Peterson. Nope. Nope. Yes. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Chairman Stone. Thank you to all the council who are here today. I will speak to you today regarding this application by Bell and their agents to install a new 5G-enabled telecommunications tower in Hoodstown. You've heard me speak to this issue before, but today I need to make sure you fully understand the genuine health issues being created by this new technology in both our urban and rural centers. When I spoke to this council last, I explained to our concerns regarding proven adverse reactions for people and our entire biosphere. Before you doubt my words, a study has come out recently that 30% of all humans are impacted by electromagnetic radiation that comes off these towers. 30%, 3% of that population, and this is the statistics for Ontario, are serious health concerns. There are actually studies that have confirmed that there are actually threats of life involved with these people who are being exposed to these radiations. I know it's common and they're happening everywhere, but the thing is, I don't know that everybody's been educated enough to understand why we have to do our best to stop this. We had the opportunity to defer the vote at the last meeting, and you did that, and we had a meeting. It wasn't really a meeting, it was an open house hosted by the agents. However, it was somewhat of a gathering. So I want to be clear, these towers and these assemblies, even whether they're monopine or steel structures, are popping up everywhere, including hospitals, schools, and in our local forests. To simplify this whole issue and to clarify it for all of us, this is essentially being now called pollution, electromagnetic pollution, because we're contaminating all of our airwaves and all of our forests and all of our communities. We are talking about pollution on a grand scale. For all of you who consider the environment to be important, this level of pollution in our environment is off the scale. And with the documents and everything that's forcing us to have to appeal to you to make this decision to absolutely refuse to allow any more of these towers. It's actually polluting our environment with a known carcinogen. And when I say carcinogen, you know that's cancer causing. Okay, so electromagnetic radiation from these towers is considered a Class 2 carcinogen. Lead paint was also a Class 2 carcinogen. Leaded gas was also a class 2 carcinogen, which we identified that there was an issue, did something about it. That's what's happening now, and it's going to be happening here eventually because it's happening across the country. What's being done now is to create, with all the research coming in, I was on a conference call last night with a whole lot of experts, including somebody that's here, and Dr. Magda Havas, who has spoken in 30 countries about the dangers of this, the radiations coming off wireless, et cetera, et cetera. These are completely artificial energies, and they're not on the scale of the human capacity to manage this. I mentioned in my last deputations that as human beings and all sentient life, we're made of 3 things: water, mineral, and frequencies. We're talking about frequencies, natural frequencies, healthy frequencies. None of these frequencies coming off these towers or in the Wi-Fi systems are healthy frequencies. They're all unhealthy frequencies. Health Canada Code 6 is about to be lawfully challenged in Ontario and across Canada, actually, because it actually was done 8 years ago. The scientific data that supports the fact that this is a real illness, these are real illnesses, they've been proven to be real illnesses, they are now infinitely testable. So a lot of things have happened even since the last time I spoke to you. And I asked you to do due diligence on this issue because really, under the Environmental Protection Act, and I did detail the item number that defines this as an elected official, if you vote to add another tower and put a tower in a community, you can be held responsible under the Environmental Protection Act if you do harm to one person. We already have 3 people identified in the area of the Hoodstown that are already been diagnosed with EF. So you already have a situation where you have compromised people before you introduce this tower. The other thing you have to understand is that we don't need these towers. The industry doesn't need these towers. We have in-ground secure systems that will boost people's wireless, give them cell phone service, much more economical, much more efficient, and they won't be contaminating our airwaves and our entire biospheres 365 days, 24 hours a day with electromagnetic radiation. So my reasons to be here today is to ask you, first of all, I'd like you to turn down the entire application. Now, I've heard you say that, oh, well, the government's going to prove it up the line. Well, let's see what the government does. Huntsville has an opportunity to actually set a different bar on this issue, and it is a global issue, and it is coming here. And all the new designs, the new hospital designs, new school designs, they're all being made to be to have safe zones. So hardwired internet, hardwired internet. Remember how we have the signs with the fragrance? You know, we had fragrance problems, so there's signs no fragrance, there's signs no smoking. We're going to be having signs in the very near future, hopefully in Huntsville as a test project, saying no cell phones. This is an accessibility issue. If you have this, been diagnosed with this, people can't even come into the town hall because of this. And they're having to walk around with EMF meters to know whether they are subject and what the levels are in a building. The Environmental Protection Act makes you potentially responsible if one person is harmed. And as, we're going to be asking for safe tech in all new construction. At some point, they're going to have safe tech in this building, and I'd like Huntsville to be part of the case projects that are coming into play in Canada that's going to ask us to test this building, test our municipal buildings for EMF, and see what we can do to reduce the hazards so that everybody can go in. Hospitals, there's a lot of people with this that have serious reactions that can't go in a hospital and need to be mediated. We all know about food allergies. We all know about, the dangers of food allergies, fragrances, allergies to medication. Well, these are people that are allergic to this electromagnetic radiation that is powered through our atmosphere in no uncertain terms. You only need to do a scan. And the work being done in Ontario is amazing and clearly challenging the government agencies, including Health Canada, including Industry Canada. And the evidence is clear that there is harm. Health Canada Code 6 say that there isn't any harm. We can prove that to be incorrect. We have proven levels of harm. In Europe, there's a whole, I can give you a resource, www. It's at the EU, I'll give it to you at the end. It's the European countries are organizing to put a moratorium on 5G. There are doctors and professionals in Canada who want a moratorium on 5G. This is why we're asking. As I say, I was on the phone with Dr. Magda Vardas, and she has all the information. She teaches at Trent University. You're certainly more than welcome to follow up with her. These energies also create harm to plants, birds, bees, anything that's sentient. They operate on frequencies, so do the bees. There's a gentleman, a doctor at the McGill University, a Dr. Paul Harrow, who has run the scale of what natural frequencies are, what the sun frequencies are, and then there's a whole bandwidth of artificial frequencies that we're being impacted from at this moment. Property values. Now the estimate of property value, now that people are becoming more aware about the health hazards of these towers, we have property values going down by 20%. Solving download speeds, et cetera, there's tech available now in ground to hardwire the systems, make them safe. Bell, on its own, offers fiber optics, so they don't need to be putting out any towers, Bell Mobility. We have to be proactive and vote no. Let's see what happens if you vote no, see what the government does. And I think that there is such a groundswell of support for this council to stop this. I hope you've heard from people. I have heard from so many people across the board, because we don't know. And unless we know, you can't vote yes. And unless you'd vote yes to have one in your backyard, you can't vote yes to have it in somebody else's backyard. Robert Kennedy has won his case against the FCC about these towers and their harm. So the www.5gappeal.eu, that's where you can find the massive argument against these towers. And also, Industry Canada, Health Canada, actually what we've discovered is that they seem to be a captured audience. They seem to be respecting and protecting the industry. Now, as elected officials, your responsibility is to protect us, not the industry. So don't feel any obligation to say yes because it's Bell Mobility.
Thanks very much, Peggy. That's 10 minutes.
Okay, just let me finish. I get my finish. It's a revolving door at Industry Canada, by the way, between all of this. There's a biological exposure, there's industry exposure, and in closing, please reject this application. These energies are propping up all across the world. Please defer the decision. If you can't say no, defer a decision, because we've got more information coming your way. We need to reduce electromagnetic smog. This pollution is widespread, and it's profiteers that are creating it on our behalf.
Wonderful.
The Human Rights Commission is also dedicated to this across Canada, and children are the most vulnerable. Thank you very much for your time and your consideration on this matter.
Thanks, Peggy. All right, our next deputant is Jerry Lentang.
Thank you for your time. I'll get that over with now. I have a lot to pack into a tiny 10 minutes.
Hi, Jerry.
My name is Gerald Edward of the family Lantane. When does my 10 minutes start?
Go.
Can you give me the 5-minute mark?
I will.
Health Canada and other North American agencies have acceptable levels of this type of radiation that far exceed levels for safe human absorption. I have previously provided to council and to the proponent the research work for the items I will be referencing in this deposition. Research shows that there are differences in acceptable levels from country to country. North American standards are 1,000 times higher than acceptable levels in the USSR and other Eastern countries. The research claiming safety is flawed due to the limitations and inadequacy of the work. In 2021, the U.S. Appellate Court ruled that thermal limits are arbitrary and capricious. FCC regulators were ignoring cautionary principles. Studies written by telecom industry-affiliated scientists are fundamentally flawed and widely reported publicly, purporting no health risk. The FDA ignored a 2018 report showing clear evidence of cancer and DNA damage. A 1979 study by the University of Michigan concludes that researchers have seen the beginnings of a conspiracy to conceal the truth about these forms of radiation. Canadian doctor Magda Havas and doctors from 42 other countries made international headlines earlier this year proving 5G is dangerous to human health. RF radiation, radio frequency radiation, is in the same carcinogen category as lead. The World Health Organization states that RF, microwave, EMF radiation was reevaluated. It would be classified as a class 1 human carcinogen. Historically, Every instance of global epidemic in the past 100 years coincides with the new introduction of radiation technology being introduced to the public, specifically the Spanish flu of 1918. In 1996, big telecom lobbyists interfered with the U.S. government regulators, prohibiting the Environmental Protection Agency from regulating wireless, which would likely affect Canada's regulations in a similar manner. The National Institute of Health, the NIH, cites that acceptable North American limits for microwave emissions cause ill effects at levels significantly lower than current national and international limits. In 1969, U.S. Naval Biosciences declared microwave radiation affects all major systems of the body. This article also links 5G to the COVID-19 outbreak. In an email to me, a CanCare representative stated that Health Canada is the responsible party for determining safety limits, not the proponent or council, as they are not authorized or qualified to undertake scientific review and make assertions or regulatory decisions regarding public health parameters. How is it possible that CanAcre and Bell are not authorized or qualified to make any assertions regarding public health? Public safety should be the #1 responsibility of their corporate duties. This admission clearly shows that through the proponents' lack of knowledge of the danger of this equipment, they are not qualified to disseminate any information to the public regarding the safety of this equipment and should not be authorized to or charged to do so. This is also an admission that both parties have neglected to do research into the safety risks associated with this equipment. The information is readily available from many sources and in most cases has been available for decades. It is also an admission that the proponent is not qualified to deploy this type of equipment and should not have been authorized to do so in the past, being that the proponent is not aware of its product's effects on the environment and human health. To the point, the proponent cannot or will not provide current, objective, and vital health study research information to the public in an unbiased manner. Any town council in the world is qualified to make assertions about regulatory decisions that affect their constituents and to request scientific review. It is their duty to protect their constituents from harm. When available research is inconsistent or contrary to Health Canada's regulations or provisions, it is their duty and the duty of every citizen to review the reputed evidence presented and verify any results. It is not an assertion that 5G causes harm. It is a scientific fact that has been downplayed and omitted by every big telecom promoter. The NIH states that EMF fields produce widespread neuropsychiatric effects. You might have all suffered from some of these in the past 2 years. Sleep disturbance, insomnia, headache, depression, depressive symptoms, fatigue, tiredness, dysesthesia, concentration attention dysfunction, memory changes, dizziness, irritability, loss of appetite, body weight, restlessness, anxiety, nausea, skin burning, tingling, dermographism, and EEG changes. In the NIH article, they state microwave radiation is detrimental to brain energy metabolism and causes brain dysfunction. Research by Texas A&M states that microwave radiation may cause brain injury. In the 1993 internal FDA memo, they state that microwave radiation promotes cancer. As well, it is in that article, it is stated that President Kennedy alerted the public about microwaves used against citizens as a weapon in a speech from November 12, 1963. This is a beauty. In 1990, Ronald Reagan authorized Project Sleeping Beauty, mind control through microwaves to disrupt the human nervous system, unhinge a man's mind, paralyze his ability to reason and react, causing rage or lethargy. That's there. They're doing that. That was approved in 1990. Evidence shows that 5G causes interference in our natural electric frequencies. Low-frequency emissions cause damage to eyes, the nervous system, and the immune system. Firefighters were injured while living at a fire station underneath cell towers. 5 out of 6 showed abnormal brain behavior. The 6th was the captain who spent half his time at another station house without a tower. EMF and RF radiation damages DNA. Whether a tower is 15 meters off the ground or 100 feet in the air, the effects are the same. The issue of the deployment of this military-styled equipment is that it transmits very low vibrational frequencies that are tuned to the same frequency as the human brain. This causes extreme interference with the normal functioning of the brain and many extremely harmful conditions reported by the Pentagon. Signals can be controlled and manipulated at any moment by raising or lowering these frequencies and directing them in specific directions, leaving the entire system open to misuse with the intent to cause harm by a future controller of that technology. Microwave radiation is commonly used as a weapon by militaries and police around the world, especially for crowd control. It was used in Australia during some riots during COVID. The people were hurt. Microwave radiation initiates phonon excitations in the brain, causing injury at nanoscale levels that act and react like ripples in a pond inside your brain. So bang. This is what causes the confusion and the lack of ability to concentrate when it's on. It is clear that the proponent and Canacre Limited do not realize the dangers of this equipment they advocate and deploy. Having had the opportunity to review the research proving the ill and dangerous effects of radiation, you will see that there is enough evidence to call for a moratorium on the current use of 5G and the further deployment of any towers by any proponent. The proponent has a duty to lawfully provide truthful information and to not willfully withhold or omit information that may negatively impact the public's opinion of 5G. I provided Canacre and by proxy Bell with this research and requested them to include it in their future public meetings and proposals to any town councils in the territories and jurisdictions of the Service Corporation of Canada. This was communicated to Canacre on March 23rd, 2023, prior to their last public meeting in Huntsville. They declined to do that. They declined to offer the information to the public that I offered them, that now they know. It would be in everyone's best interest, including Big Telecom, to power down all 5G systems across Muskoka and the territories and jurisdiction of the Service Corporation of Canada before further damage is perpetrated on innocent and ill-informed communities across this country by the omission of this vital information. Anything short of full disclosure of this information to the public would seem to be complicit with criminal intent to withhold information with the intent of causing bodily harm by all parties involved. The dangerous effects of this equipment is undeniable. Council must reject all 5G installation requests from this point forward. Council must also demand the withdrawal of current 5G installations throughout our community. It is the duty of Town Council to protect its constituents from harm and ill health, of which microwave, electromagnetic field, and radio frequency radiation are most lethal. You must vote no to this tower, to this installation of this tower. Thank you all.
Thank you. 8 seconds to go. Nailed it.
I practiced.
Beautiful. Thanks, Jerry. All right, we have one last deputation by Alex Ewell. You don't need to sign that, Jerry. Oh. We already know. Okay. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Mayor, councillors. Nice to be back again. You saw me last month. I'm again representing the Fox Lake Association. We are an association, we have 70 members, with households, which is over half of the population of our community around Fox Lake. The residents of the area have spoken to us as a Fox Lake Association and asked us to present on their behalf. The majority of residents around Fox Lake, and this community is East Fox Lake Road, West Fox Lake Road, North Fox Lake Road, Rachel's Lane, and Yale's Nature Walk, and the majority of, or large sections of Ravenscliff Road, which is also Muskoka Road too, have absolutely no cell phone service whatsoever. We are a big dead zone. Very few residents have high-speed internet, only those with Starlink. Everyone else has no internet or unreliable, slow, and unstable internet, including me. So this is an issue. I mean, here we are today where the meeting is online. the world we live in 2023 is a connected world. The Government of Canada has made a commitment. It's a priority for them to increase connectivity in rural areas of Canada. I think we qualify. And it is a huge issue for our people. Our population is growing. We have more full-time residents, we have more backlots that are being built on, and our part-time residents are spending increasing amount of time at the lake. And they are trying to work from there, their kids are going to school from there, and they're trying to do their banking, they're trying to access government services, and it is a huge challenge. We have parents who, their kids can't do their homework and submit their assignments online, which they're all required to do these days. They don't get messages from their school about when the schools are closed because they don't have internet. So that's a huge problem. The second, or I would say that even greater concern that comes to me personally is from people who don't have cell phone service. They don't have landlines because hardly anybody has landlines anymore, and that infrastructure is also really old and drops every time we have a storm. The power goes out. They have no ability to contact emergency services or their families. You think of this past winter, huge snowstorm. Several ice storms, wind, trees down across the road. People were very, very nervous. People driving to from work and school, worried about being stranded on the road, unable to communicate with their families, unable to call emergency services. We also have lots of seniors. This is a big issue for them, unable to call family or emergency services when urgent things arise. This is not only a problem for the residents, but your own town workers, bell workers, the emergency services, Hydro One people can't call back to their offices when they're out there. I cannot tell you how many times they're out on the road, something happens, they've got to get in their vehicle and drive 4 kilometers down the road in order to be able to call in here to get advice or to get extra help on what's going on. We do believe that this is an equity issue. We would like to have equitable access to the services that people in town have, and we feel it is a safety issue that we don't have. Most people are unable to call emergency services when they're needed. For that reason, we would ask council to approve concurrence with the application.
Thank you very much. All right. Well, that concludes our deputations. So we're going to move into public meetings. So I'd like to welcome everyone to the public portion of this meeting to consider applications to amend the zoning bylaw 2008-66P and the community planning permit bylaw 2022-97 pursuant to subsection 34 of the Planning Act. The procedure to be followed in these public meetings will be as follows. A brief explanation of the purpose and effect of the application and any correspondence received to date will be given by staff. The applicant or the representative will be asked to provide any additional comments without repeating the information already outlined by staff. Any members of the public present, in person or electronically, will then be permitted to ask questions or provide comments respecting the applications. Council will then have the opportunity to question the applicant, the planner, or anyone giving presentations. Once the public meeting is concluded, the input received and proposed amendments will be considered by council. Any persons making representation are requested to first state their name and mailing address. Please note that presentations are limited to 10 minutes. Please be informed that an appellant must provide an oral submission at the public meeting or written submission prior to the passage of the zoning or CPP bylaw amendment. Otherwise, the Ontario Land Tribunal may dismiss the appeal. If you wish to be notified of the passage of a bylaw, you must file either with the recording secretary or with the clerk a written request for notification prior to the passage of the proposed bylaw. Each notice of complete application and public meeting included an explanation of the purpose and effect of the proposed amendment and notice required to be posted at the subject lands. Notice was therefore considered to have been provided in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and applicable sections of the Huntsville Official Plan. Whew. All right, and Kelsey's going to speak to us about the Bigelow application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property is located at 454 Markles Road. Oops. The property is within the waterfront designation in the official plan. The property is also within the waterfront residential 60-meter precinct and flood zone precincts, as well as with the previous exception of Shoreline Residential 1, exception 484, natural constraint 2 overlay and flood overlay. The purpose of the application is to change the precinct on the lot from waterfront residential to waterfront residential 60-meter with exception to permit a secondary residential unit within a detached garage, increase the gross floor area of the secondary residential unit from 75 square meters to 84 square meters, and increase the footprint of the secondary detached garage within a waterfront residential precinct from 60 meters to 84 meters. So I've just highlighted those provisions below and highlighted the garage on the plan, so it's closer to the road, as you can see here. Secondary residential dwelling units are not permitted within the WR1 precinct. A detached private cabin is a permitted use within the WR1 precinct. However, the property has an existing private cabin that now houses a secondary private cabin, which houses a short-term rental accommodation, and only one private cabin is permitted on a property. The proposed secondary residential unit would also have cooking facilities and is to be used year-round on a permanent basis, which also makes it distinct from a private cabin. In rural, urban, and rural residential precincts, secondary residential units are permitted where there is appropriate access and frontage to a year-round maintained road and situated away from natural constraints. Waterfront residential uses are generally seasonal and positioned on and around waterfront vulnerable lakes and rivers, which are not suited for residential intensification. In this instance, the proposed detached secondary residential unit is within a 2-story garage on a private road fronting on the Muskoka River. The intent of the CPP is to encourage residential intensification through the use of secondary residential units within areas that front onto a municipally maintained road, are positioned away from Muskoka's natural heritage systems. Access is readily available to community facilities such as schools, and demand on public services such as fire, police, and home care can be optimized. Detached secondary residential units can also not exceed 75 square meters, whereas the proposed unit is 84 square meters, and the additional garage does not comply with the footprint for a 2-story garage within the waterfront precinct. Therefore, relief is needed to increase the footprint. Where detached secondary residential units and larger 2-story garages are permitted, it's usually within rural and rural residential precincts where properties are often larger in area and where these uses can fit behind dwellings and be hidden from the road, resulting in minimal visual impacts. The proposed 2-story garage will be highly visible from the road and potentially prominent within the natural landscape. The garage is also abutting an area of the property considered high-risk hazardous forest type within the wildland fire identification within that the ministry does. Policies we do require a study, which the applicants did for a previous application, and they've positioned this away from that area, but no amendment was provided for that study. Oops. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. District of Muskoka staff reviewed the application and provided comments noting that the Muskoka official plan does not allow secondary residential units within the waterfront designation. They noted in order to protect ecological features and functions of lakes, rivers, and shorelines to ensure that the character of new development is reflective of and compatible of existing development, only low-density single residential units are permitted in the waterfront area. The fire department provided comments and is concerned with the private road access to the property, because it won't provide access for a fire department apparatus, and they requested that the building be designed to exceed Ontario fire safety requirements. 4 letters of support were provided, and 1 letter of objections which were provided to council. Through staff's review and analysis, the applicant The application would appear not to conform with the intent of the official plan or be consistent with the provincial policy statement, and therefore staff are recommending denial. Thank you very much, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Kelsey. I will go to the applicant or the representative. Mr. Gallagher, welcome.
There we go. I'm on this time. Set my clock. I should be taking Jerry's speed talking
That's
course.
right,
I might
yeah.
get more done. Thank you, Chair Stone and members of council for hearing the application today. I'm here with Garth and Rebecca Bigelow, the owners of the lands, and we have seen them before in front of council with regards to their short-term rental on their property well back from the water that is very successful. I would only ask that you maybe take a look at some of the reviews and you'll see the type of people that Rebecca and Garth are in dealing with the clients. 5-star reviews all around, not one negative comment that I could see. And I think they would carry that on being a landlord on a month-to-month rental case. In that regard, we have reviewed the staff report, and obviously we have a difference of professional opinion with regards to that. As Kelsey had mentioned, the property is large. It has over 60 meters frontage and 1.2 hectares lot area. The single-family dwelling, if we could get the air photo up, and can I use the single-family dwelling is located right adjacent the waterway. Just slide over. Yes, so if you see here, the single-family dwelling is down by the water. This is the driveway to Tim Thompson's cottage.
Can you pull the microphone closer?
Sorry.
That's great, thanks.
And this is the driveway to Tim Thompson's. You can see this large wooded area up here, and you'll see a clearing right back here at the back of the lot. This was all dug out of the hillside when Tim was preparing the roads for the driveways and the building sites when they severed all the land originally on that property. There is ample vegetation throughout the lot, especially on the east side of the lot. When you get down near the water, it does get a little marshy in that regard. The land rises from the Muskoka River to the midpoint of the land. There's ample opportunity, vegetation throughout the lot. There will be no change to the vegetation that has protected through this current site plan agreement on the lands. The area of the proposed garage was previously used as a wayside pit to create roads and driveways nearby. This area is void of vegetation and is flat, level ground. And it's been dug out of the hillside, so if you look, it's hidden on 3 sides pretty much by the change of grade where it was dug out. The area is void of vegetation. It is also located outside of the wildland fire hazard risk area. Originally it was in, we moved the location so that it would be beyond there to avoid having to do a study on the property. The owners proposed to build a 2-story garage with a 2-bedroom apartment above. It would provide a much-needed rental unit close to town. It is not the owner's intent to rent the apartment as short-term rental. The location of the garage is being placed to the extreme rear portion of the property. It will be about 253, 830 feet from the Muskoka River. The owner is proposing to allow for a secondary suite above this 900 square feet garage. It will meet the front yard, side yard, rear yard, and lot coverage requirements. In the Huntsville official plan, it's my professional opinion that the property is split designated in both the waterfront designation down near the cottage and the lower area, but also in a rural designation. And the area of the garage is almost double the 150-meter distance that establishes the waterfront designation. If you look at section 721 of the official plan, It states that the waterfront includes those lands outside the Huntsville urban area, the community, Hidden Valley, and generally extend inland 150 meters from any water body greater than 8 hectares, including the Muskoka River. And it goes on to say that this designation includes all lands that physically and functionally relate to the shoreline, even though they may extend more than 150. Subsequently, it also states that where residential property let me go back here. In this instance, the garage's location is 830 feet from the water body. This is more than 103 meters, 338 further back than the 150 boundary of the waterfront designation. And in looking at the criteria in determining whether or not something is in the waterfront designation, the physical relationship to the land to the water is the most important factor. In this regard, the location of the garage is isolated at the rear of the property. It was already cleared. It has a flat cut surrounded by 3 sides of higher elevations of land, and this limits the connectivity to the waterfront. There is no slope issue in the area of the construction or looking down upon other buildings nearby. It also speaks about the extent to which land, buildings, and facilities are associated with the waterfront area. In my opinion is that there will be no association with the waterfront area for this rental apartment. The lease will only allow the tenant to rent the apartment and would exclusively prohibit access to the waterfront. The building will have its own septic and well. It's going to be a significant 250 meters back from the river, well beyond the 30-meter setback. And as well, the building's a significant setback. Section 7.23 state that lands that do not physically and functionally relate to the waterfront, even though they may be closer than 150, may not be included in the waterfront area. And the proposal for the zoning is to continue with the low density such that the built form would not dominate the landscape, given the overall coverage of the lot. The garage does not dominate, as it only takes up 0.007% of the lot coverage. And having a 2-story structure is a compact form of building. So when you make the determination between whether this is rural designation or waterfront, then you have to use the policies that you determine. It's up to this council to determine whether they think the garage is in the waterfront or in the rural designation. And what I would say beyond that was, so then, because staff have excluded all the policies in the rural area on the report, I would say that in section 6825, land use in the designation includes single-family dwellings on large lots, and it allows for low-density residential use. It also allows for secondary units in the rural area. And some of the items that they want to do is to limit the vegetation clearing and have it blend in. And I think with the size of the garage being so small, the visual impact is minimized. I think having this cut on the 3 sides of change of elevation hides it from 3 sides of view. The right-of-way that drives through there provides access to the roughly 7 or so cottages down the road there. But there will be no tree cutting required or disturbance of grades. The land is already cleared. Okay. Development is required to be serviced by well, water, and septic, which it will be well back from the water. Residential, including secondary units, are permitted under policy 68217. It will be rented under landlord-tenant and not under the short-term rental. The lot needs to be appropriately sized for water, fitting it on there and preserving. We've tried to locate the garage in such a location that we're avoiding vegetation clearing. We're not dealing with grades on the site. And again, we keep it further back The existing right-of-way is not compromised by the location of the garage, and the garage meets the other requirements of the bylaw. The district official plan, again, they only spoke to the waterfront designations. It's surprising that they didn't speak to some of the residential policies with respect to rentals in the area. You know, we know there's issues, and sometimes when looking at official plan policies, we need to prioritize what is important. In this regard, you know, my clients heard the town wanted to get more residential apartments going. They've taken the time, money, and their own effort to come up with a plan to do that, to house people.
Thanks, John.
Thank you very much.
that is 10 minutes.
I'd be glad to answer any questions, and they would as well.
All right.
And we have 5 letters of support, I believe.
Stick around. I will go to anyone in person that wishes to speak to this application. Seeing none, I will go to anyone electronically that might be online that wants to speak to the application.
Chair Stone, I see no hands raised electronically.
Okay? Then I'll go to council. Mayor Alcock has a question.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and thank you for the presentation, both Kelsey and John. I have a couple of questions, but I'll just start with one
Okay.
and let it go around. So, John, you made reference, or Kelsey, you made reference to the fire department. We're not wild about it, but unless they implemented a more for their designs to exceed normal standards, right? And I'm assuming that would mean sprinkler systems, that sort of thing. So my question is, if that was the case, did they have any issues with it?
Kelsey?
Thank you for your question, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, usually they recommend sprinklering, or if it's not that, I've heard they've looked at other mitigation measures, just making sure that there's access for things to be carried a certain distance. Yeah, so that's something, and they didn't say if they would support it or not, whether that would be, we didn't get into those discussions. But yeah, I also wanted to clarify one thing about the designations, just in terms of it being waterfront. So the reason why this lot is developable is because it's on waterfront. If it wasn't on waterfront, or it wasn't in the waterfront designation, it wouldn't be allowed development on a private road. So that's what makes this lot distinct as a waterfront property. So I just wanted to clarify that too.
May I
Follow up?
follow up
Yep.
just on that? So going back to my original, so they didn't say they would support it, but certainly the implication being if all of these more stringent guidelines were followed, then as we have done elsewhere, it would be more palatable. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
Yeah.
that's how I'm receiving.
Thank you for the
that's-
question. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that's my understanding, that they just need to be able to reach all the policies that they need to reach. And usually at this stage, we haven't looked at the building design and such. So that's something that we have worked with applicants with in prior decisions. So it's something that we could maybe deal with in this case too.
I'll go to Councillor Cloutier.
Through you, Chair. I don't have too much of a problem with this application, just because of the distance it is from the water, the site visibility of it built into the bank where it is. It seems to be, as far as the fire department goes, there's already a residence past there, so I mean, if they can get to that one, they can get to this one. But if they do call for a fire suppression system or whatever, I'm okay with it. But I don't have a problem with this, just because of the distance of the way it is from the water, and we do need full-time rental property badly.
Thanks. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair Stone. John, I'm just wondering, why are the applicants asking for the increase in size on the square meters?
Pretty much
Go ahead, John.
There we go. Pretty much a two-story garage is 30 by 30. It was a comfortable number that they could have appropriately sized. I mean, yes, you could build a two-bedroom apartment at 800 square feet. So yeah, it might be a little bit more luxurious, but 100 square feet's not going to cut it. You're not going to notice the difference of 100 square feet.
Is that fair?
Yeah, and just to follow up.
Sure.
I'm also, I'm in support of the landowner's application. If the intent is to create long-term rentals, and I spoke to the applicant, and he assured me that that was the case. I know it's not what planning recommends, but we all know how much we need long-term rentals in Huntsville right now. And I will always be willing to look at any and all options to increase that supply. And I think that's the case here. The only thing I would say to the applicant is that in the event they decide at some point to apply to the licensing committee for a short-term rental license, I would not support that request at any time, as there's already a short-term rental on the property. Thanks.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thanks, Chair Stone, through you. Maybe you can answer this, John, or maybe the Bigelows. I'm just curious, it's a private driveway, correct?
It is a private right-of-way from the end of Markles Road. It is accessible, and when we did the short-term rental, we had to do the fire study for that because it was in the middle. It provided a number of recommendations, and I would advise my client that we should be looking at similar recommendations for the site. I mean, it could be hardy board siding, it could be a metal roof, it could be ICF. All these things contribute to avoid having the building set on fire. And again, they're investing a substantial amount of money in this garage. They don't want to lose their investment. But the access is there. They access year-round, and thank you.
So, but basically that was my question about year-round access. So is it maintained by the Bigelows, or is it private road that's maintained by a group of associations?
The whole bunch of cottages are accessed, and it's maintained by one person.
So, and there's no objections from anybody there? Okay, perfect, thanks.
All right, thanks. Any other questions of committee? Mayor Alcock.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So, with respect to the long-term rental, I certainly am inclined to support it for that reason as well. I am a bit confused, though, because, John, you made reference in your presentation on a month-by-month rental basis. So,
Landlord tenant is typically called month to month, so even after the lease is up, you still continue on a
month by month, and that's how that's done.
But it is I'll say a rental under the landlord tenant as opposed to under short-term, because short-term's not under landlord tenant.
Right, so that, and I know you made reference to the landlord tenant later, and that certainly was, I think, explained it. I just wasn't sure why the month-by-month reference, that's all. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Renwick.
Thank you, Chair Stone. I guess this would be just a comment. In general, I am in support of this residence as well, as long as it is a long-term rental, for sure. The question I have, or the comment I have, when I was looking at the images of the property itself, the photo of the primary residence wasn't in our package, which I see now that it's there. So the small little short-term rental unit is in the center of the property, so you can't see it on the photo, correct? But I did look up the other development when they came to council in 2021, so it's a really cool little structure. So there is okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to clarify. Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's the dwelling down by the water,
Right.
Which you saw in the one image, the drone image. And then there's the ox box, which is in the middle in the treed area, and this is proposed to be at the back of the lot. And the ox box and the dwelling are short-term rentals. Yeah.
But also
Yeah.
cottage.
Yeah, the cottage and the ox box are short-term rentals.
Right. So, sorry, just to follow up, Chair Stone. It's a prime. But I guess to what Deputy Armour said as well about Deputy Mayor Armour said about the fact that we want to have it not as short-term rental. It needs to be in the pool of long-term rentals. And I would, if it does change, we'd want to know that for sure.
Go ahead, John.
In my planning report that I submitted with the application, I actually made a recommendation that that be included in the bylaw, and it seems to be being heard around here. And before I took this from Garth, I made it clear that I was going to be doing this application on the basis of long-term rental, not short-term, and we would not have an objection to having that in the bylaw.
Thanks for that. Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and through you. I'm also in support of this because we're all pretty passionate about long-term rentals, and I love that John's already planning on that being right in the application. Question is, Kelsey, maybe you can answer this. Bill 97 is coming in, and with it's replacing the provincial policy statement with, I think, a provincial planning statement. Is that correct? Do you know if that would have any impact, the changes in Bill 97 have an impact on an application such as this as we move forward as a council?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I think Kristen will speak more to that, but I think the changes in the PPS are more reflective of areas within the intensification area and not the waterfront area, so I don't think that would change. But yeah, if Kristen, Director Maxwell, has anything else to say on that. No. And I was just going to say, we had a motion that we prepared that is a bit stricter about the only having this as a secondary residential unit. And I have put that resolution in our alternatives if we're
Thank
going
you.
that way. Thank you.
Are there any more questions of council? Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and thank you both for your presentations. I definitely support this. I think it's the one of instances that like this are special, and we have to look at them individually. You know, we think of looking at our OP and that kind of thing, but I don't think there's a cookie cutter solution for all these applications. So I'm glad we're reviewing this one and we're doing it singularly. In a lot of cases, it makes sense. So I support it. I did have one question. You said drone, because I wrote down drone photos in planning moving forward. How often do we use drones for photos? Because I think it presents a great opportunity for us for better visuals in these applications.
So I noticed when I was preparing myself for this presentation, and thank you for the question, that I didn't have any photos of the waterfront property, so I got creative and used some of the Airbnb photos. Our department doesn't have a drone, but I know Manager Clark has experience with drones, so who knows what will happen in the future, but I'd love to be a drone pilot one day. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Just one more comment. Maybe there's synergies, because I know some other departments would like to utilize drones as well. So if it can be an advantage to us in making these decisions, then awesome.
I'm sure staff have heard. Thank you. All right. I'm going to read the motion, and then if there's something different you'd like, then we can entertain that. So the original motion, moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Mayor Alcock. Be it resolved that the Planning Council deny Community Planning Permit Amendment Application, CPP A03-2023 HDE, changing the precinct on the lands from a waterfront residential 60 meters, WR1 precinct, to a waterfront residential 60 meters with exception, precinct 2. 1, permit a secondary residential dwelling unit within a detached garage, increase the gross floor area of the secondary residential dwelling unit from 75 square meters to 84 square meters, and increase the footprint of a 2-story detached garage within a waterfront residential precinct from 60 square meters to 84 square meters. So with that, if anyone wishes to make an amendment, or I'll call the question. Councillor Clark?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the application. And John had mentioned about including a bylaw, if that could be done as well, to do with long-term rentals.
All right. Is there a seconder for this motion? Deputy Mayor Alcock, or Deputy, sorry. that was last term. Deputy Mayor Armour. the amendment. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Deputy Mayor Armour. Be it resolved that the following word be deleted, deny, and that the following word be inserted in its place, approve. And further, that the following word be inserted following the words secondary residential unit in line 1. I thought we were going to speak to. Oh, okay. And was there going to be any information about it only being a long-term? Okay. All right. So, questions, or Mayor Alcock?
You really want me to?
I
put that-
do.
It's not- I can't go back, Bob. I can't go back. I just, thank you, Chair Stone. I just wanted to know, is this the wording that you were proposing, Kelsey, when you, okay.
right.
Thank you.
That's great, thanks. Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thanks, Chair. Through you, do we need anything in here to speak to the fire department and doing something extra, like putting in
Kelsey?
a sprinkler system?
Sorry, thank you for the question through you, Mr. Chair. They will be required to do a CPP amendment. So usually we cover that in the special, the agreement in the special conditions. So if they had something that they had to have sprinklering, that would be in there. So they have an additional approval that they'll have to go through.
All right. Any other questions about the amendment? All in favor of the amendment? And that's carried. And I will ask for the main motion as amended. All in favor? And that's carried as well. Thank you very much. All right. All right. Now that all comments have been received, I declare these public meetings respecting the above applications to be concluded. We will now move to the non-public portion of the meeting. And Mr. Clark is going to speak to the telecommunications tower. Sure. Let's do it after. Whenever you're ready, Richard.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. This is a returning item and deals with a proposed telecommunication tower at 27 Hoodstown Road. On January 25th, 2023, Planning Council considered a prior concurrence request for this proposal, which is for a 35-meter tall monopine style telecommunication tower to be operated by Bell. At that time, in response to concerns that all previous consultation were held virtually, Planning Council postponed a decision until the applicant conducted one additional in-person public consultation meeting regarding the proposed tower. On March 29th, 2023, the applicant's agent, Canacre Limited, or Canacre, held an in-person open house to provide the public with additional opportunity to learn about the proposed tower and provide their feedback. Canacre has now submitted a second concurrence request respecting the tower, and the report before you today deals with that matter. This is the subject property, which is again 27 Hoodstown Road. The requested concurrence deals with the same proposal. A location map, compound location, and compound layout plan was included in a site plan that's contained in attachment 2 to the staff report. And it's shown here on your screen, or on the screen in front of you. This is the location of the tower. A 3D visual simulation video was created to show how the tower would appear from different vantage points. Screenshot images taken from this video were produced or reproduced in the staff report as attachment number 3, and Some of those images are on the screens in front of you. And I'll just stop sharing the slides. Section E7 of the 2019 official plan indicates that the town supports the development of broadband communication facilities, noting that visually prominent lands and areas with historic or cultural significance should be avoided wherever possible. Section E7.2 further requires public consultation and consideration of the visual impacts of communication towers prior to such facilities being located in the municipality. The site for the tower in this instance is located toward the northwestern portion of the property. While this tower is proposed atop a hill, the tower will be mostly hidden from view from Lake Vernon by larger hills situated between it and the lake. The monopine style tower also helps mitigate visual impacts associated with the tower when viewed from other less screened vantages, where the top of the tower may be slightly more prominent. It has been noted by Canacre that this proposed tower installation will not require any lighting protection. It has also been noted by Canacre that there are no other viable existing towers in the area that would be suitable for operations of Bell's network equipment to establish enhanced coverage. Further, in this instance, it's noted by Canacre that all existing nearby towers already hold Bell equipment. As such, co-location opportunities are not possible. A natural heritage evaluation and impact assessment report was submitted in support of this proposal, and mitigation measures to protect potential bat and migratory bird habitat are recommended for implementation. Overall, the additional consultation resulted in more members of the public indicating support for the proposed tower versus objections. 15 parties submitted written comment letters in response to the additional circulation and the meeting held by Canacre. 10 comments were received that were considered positive. 2 were considered neutral and or proposed questions, and 3 were considered negative. As with the previous round of consultation, supporters generally expressed support for the improved service provided or proposed, including from a safety perspective for accessing emergency services. Objectors generally identified concerns relating to potential negative health effects associated with the proposed new tower, its location in relation to surrounding residential dwellings, and potential environmental concerns. As the proposal appears to meet the requirements of the town's protocol and concerns have been reasonably addressed, staff are recommending that council concur with the proposal and that the Innovation Science and Economic Development Canada be advised that the town has no objections, conditional on no lighting being mounted on the tower, and impact mitigation measures being implemented in the Natural Heritage Evaluation Report. Thank you, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks very much. I'm going to go to the applicant, who I believe is online, is he not?
Yes, he is. Chair Stone, he's online.
All right, if you can bring him up.
Good afternoon, Council. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Oh. There we are. Through the chair, I think Richard's presentation covered most of what we've discussed, and I'd be happy to answer any questions from Council regarding the proposal.
All right, well, thank you very much. At this point, I will go to Council. Are there any comments or questions for staff or the applicant? Mayor Alcock.
I do have comments, but I do have a question of Richard. And that is in reference to the recommendational, I think you spoke to this, but a little more detail if possible, and that was around the mitigation measures with respect to the natural heritage evaluation. And any further comments around that would be appreciated.
Richard?
Yes, sure, great question. When we initially learned that there was going to be a proposal for a tower on this property, what usually happens is the proponent gives us an idea that they're looking at that location. And one of the things that was flagged by staff is that there would be potential deer wintering habitat, as well as potential habitat for significant wildlife habitat. So we asked for them to do additional work to characterize what natural heritage features may be on the property and look at what potential impacts may occur if the tower was to go forward. That report was conducted by Tulloch Engineering, and they identified that there would be no concerns on deer wintering habitat just because of the scale of the development. And they indicated that there would be tree removal needed for the proposal, and that means that there could be potential impacts on migratory birds or for bat habitat. So they did propose mitigation measures related to the timing of the tree removals to mitigate those impacts. So part of our recommendation is that the recommendations in the report be implemented as part of this proposal.
And your comment, if you wanted to?
Unless other people have questions, or I'm happy to.
You keep rolling.
Okay, Okay, my overall comment then is, this has obviously been a difficult, one of our difficult decisions, because of whenever you have a lot of public input, then certainly I know from my experience, and I would suggest everyone around the table, you tend to give a lot of thought to every aspect of the proposal. And so I thank everybody for their input. And I guess the way I'm coming down to the decision with respect to this is I have to view this proposal through the lens which is within the authority that I have around this table, we all have around this table, and that is through the authority of a municipal lens, and thus the question around the condition on natural heritage. So when I look at what is, no, it's all important, but what I have is in the realm of my authority as part of the decision maker, it is around land use, around protection of the environment with respect to land use and wildlife and all of those things. It is also with respect to decisions that we make that might have an impact on the safety of our residents. And when I read all of the input, we had numerous letters, most of them in support of this application for reasons of safety and overall health in relation to the lack of service in the area. So what comes to mind is our last weather event where we didn't have hydro in parts of our community for over a week, or 5 days with minimum. And when people are alone in wherever they're living, and they don't have that kind of access, and they are isolated, then it's a huge safety concern. Another person made the reference to the fact that they commute to work. So there are a number of permanent residents in the area, and they commute to work in the middle of the winter and potentially on an icy road, and they have no way of calling for help if they need to, if in the case of an emergency. those are the sorts of things where I feel I have a role, and as a municipal elected official, I have some say in that and how we deliver those services. From that perspective, I am very much in support of this application. With respect to the issues around health that were raised by, and with great deal of passion, and I listen carefully, I have to go, I am not a medical expert. I am not an expert in this field. And so I have to listen to the authorities where they have this expertise. And from that perspective, at the moment, Health Canada is one of the authorities of several in the health field that does have that expertise. And so at this point, this proposal is well within those guidelines. From my perspective, that's the authority that I will take the recommendations from. So that's my comment. It was a difficult one, and but I have thought it through, and I would absolutely support this application.
All right, well, I thank you for all those comments. Anything else from council? Comments, questions? Seeing none, I will read the motion. No, there's not at this time. Moved by Councillor Cloutier, seconded by Councillor Schumacher. Whereas having met the requirements of the Town of Huntsville Protocol with respect to the proposed telecommunications facility, as detailed in the concurrence request letter from CanCare Limited, dated May 2nd, 2023, contained in the attachment number 1 to this report. Now therefore be it resolved that Council concur with the proposal and Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada be advised that the Town of Huntsville has no objections to the construction of a 35-meter tall monopine-style telecommunications tower on lands municipally known as 27 Hoodstown Road. 27 Hoodstown Road, and legally described as Part Lot 29, Concession 7, former geographic township of Stisted in the Town of Huntsville. Conditional on no lighting being mounted on the tower, and impact mitigation measures as outlined in the Natural Heritage Evaluation and Impact Assessment prepared by Tulloch, dated November 2021 and updated in December 2021, being implemented as recommended therein. Any comments or questions?
There's a lot of us back here that do have questions.
No, I'm sorry. Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thank you, Chair Stone. Just a quick comment. I have to echo our mayor on this. If you look at Safety Code 6, et cetera, and the studies that are done behind, I think we need to go in the right direction, and I think this does meet that Safety Code 6, so I can support this. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments? All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you very much. All right, Madeline, you are speaking to the next application on Chaffee Township Road. You know what? We're going to take a 10-minute break at this time. All right? All right, here we go. Madeline, you're on.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, the subject property is located at 77 Chaffee Township Road. Oh. There we go. The lot is designated residential within Huntsville's urban settlement area in Huntsville's official plan and is under the urban residential low with the natural constraints 1 and 2 overlay and a flood zone overlay in the community planning permit bylaw. An application was submitted for the creation of 2 new residential lots to facilitate the construction of a semi-detached dwelling. Each severed lot would have an area of approximately 616 square meters and 11 meters of frontage on Chaffee Township Road. The retained lot would have an area of approximately 2,520 square meters and 45 meters of frontage on Chaffee Township Road. The consent would be conditional on the following: a registerable description of the severed lot being submitted to the clerk along with a registered copy of the reference plan, the owner's taxes being in good standing, a site inspection fee of $255 being paid to the town of Huntsville, a consent finalization fee in the amount of $200 being paid to the town of Huntsville per lot, 5% cash in lieu of parkland being paid to the town of Huntsville on the severed lands, the removal of the detached garage, the lands being subject to an agreement with the district municipality of Muskoka respecting district servicing, and a wetland assessment being completed by a qualified professional to the satisfaction of the town of Huntsville to determine the boundaries of the wetland and identify any appropriate buffer widths and other mitigation measures. Lot requirements for a semi-detached dwelling in the urban residential low precinct require 11 meters of frontage with an area of 345 square meters and a minimum lot area of 465 square meters and 15 meters of frontage for single detached dwellings. So both the severed and retained lots will meet their respective lot frontage and area requirements for this precinct. The property is also within the natural constraints 1 and 2 overlay, and that includes stratum 2 deer wintering habitat, steep slopes, a wetland, and a cold water stream. Proposed plans for the development on the severed lots has not yet been received by the town. However, negative effects to any development would be appropriately mitigated provided development on the lot is set back sufficiently from the identified natural constraints. The development envelope on both the severed lots is currently cleared and grassed, and any proposed vegetation removal within 30 meters of the natural features on the lot would require a community planning permit application. The existing detached garage will be removed to ensure that a non-compliance is not created by having an accessory structure on a lot before the primary structure, and a condition has been added to ensure this. It should also be noted that for the retained lot, all remaining existing structures will be compliant with the lot requirements in the urban residential low precinct. The subject lands are designated residential within the Huntsville urban settlement area, and development guidelines within the set designation encourage intensification and are intended to ensure that permitted uses and densities result in a compact form. Permitted uses in the residential designation include a mix of residential dwelling types, densities, tenure, and affordability. The official plan does not provide minimum frontage requirements for residential lots. However, the policies do note that development is to be designed in a way to minimize land consumption and efficiently use infrastructure and community facilities. In this instance, as the proposed new lots are within the urban settlement area and in a built-up area with access to public infrastructure and services, the proposal would assist in achieving suitable intensification as per the policies. The policies in Part B of the official plan speak to environmental protection. They generally direct development away from natural heritage features and hazard lands that are unsuitable for development, such as watercourses and wetlands. A condition has been included to require the owner to obtain a wetland assessment to determine the boundaries of the wetland and identify appropriate buffer widths and other mitigation measures. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. A comment was received contesting to the application. Through further discussion, staff received confirmation on May 3rd that there would be an objection to the application. The applicant and the commenter had an opportunity to meet on site and discuss the proposal. However, there was no resolution made to satisfy the objection. Concerns were raised regarding property line stakes, increased development, the size of the lots and the density, and natural features on the lots and in the surrounding area, and all of which were addressed through staff's review of the application. The District of Muskoka staff have provided no objection to the proposal, provided that the lands be subject to an agreement relating to district servicing amongst other matters. And through staff's review and analysis, the application would appear to conform to the intent of the official plan and be consistent with the provincial policy statement, and therefore staff are recommending approval. Thank you for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. I'll ask the applicant if they would like to make comments. Are they here in person? He is here in person.
Here live. Good afternoon,
Welcome.
Chair Stone, committee, Lanny Dennis, Planning. Certainly, I represent the owner, Mr. Mark Kirkby. He's in the gallery behind me there. So I appreciate the efforts and assistance of staff bringing the application forward, and concur with the planning department to approve the application. As noted, the severances would facilitate the creation of one new semi-detached residential dwelling. Both the severed and retained lots comply to the community permit planning bylaw. Just briefly, the merits of the proposal, I believe it reflects the character of the area, and I think that was identified in the staff report as well. It's compact form. It provides a different sort of housing type, adding to the mix in the area as well. It's an infilling project to intensify the area, optimizing the use of existing municipal infrastructure. The lots are large and certainly accommodate the 30-meter setback from the wetland feature, which I'll revisit that in a minute. The lots are cleared, and there's lawn basically back to the top of the bank. So the building sites would be up near the front of the property, so because it's already cleared, it minimizes the disruption to the lots. I'm satisfied with the conditions, except for the wetland assessment, and I'm sort of wondering here, since the building would be at the front of the property, and we have to comply with the 30-meter setback. The sketch shows clearly we're at least 26 meters away with any sort of building, but even still on that note, Mr. Kirkby had provided a sketch, and I'm just going to send this around, and I'll send some photos around in a minute as well. Basically, from the vegetation community, sort of where the transition occurs, it's somewhere between the edge of the creek and the bottom of the slope. So we're probably where the building would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 140 feet or so away from where that wetland feature is, and certainly would meet the 30-meter setback, even if one was to include the top of the bank. So I just want to send just a couple of photos to give you maybe an idea in terms of the vegetation communities. This first one, it's from the creek looking up the hill. I don't know if you guys can see that very well, but I can send it around. Maybe Jason.
We're not supposed to do that, actually.
All right, you're not allowed to do that?
No, not anymore.
And we can't do that?
No,
Oh,
no,
okay.
no. But
Well,
if we can put up pictures and you can describe it there.
Yeah.
Do we have pictures?
No, you probably don't have any pictures because we just took them.
Sorry,
today.
Chair Stone. Yeah, we don't have the photos that Lanny's
Okay,
brought
well,
forward.
then you just have to take my word for it.
Perfect.
So the first picture does show it's hardly a wetland, if you will, but it may start somewhere between that interface between the edge of the creek and the bottom of the slope. There's another photo that shows sort of the top of the bank with the stake. looking down into the forest, and it's clearly well vegetated with mature, existing mature coniferous and deciduous forest. There's clearly a defined top of bank, and any vegetation doesn't start until well over the other side of that top of bank. And again, as I can say, that the area is already deficient; it's devoid of any vegetation. So, just wanted to indicate that, and I was hoping maybe that we might be able to. I would request that perhaps that could be removed from the decision. These studies, they cost money, obviously, and they're for good reason, to protect the ecology, but at the same time, it also adds to the housing costs. And that's what we're trying to do right now, is get some more housing to accommodate a significant shortfall. With respect to the comments from the neighbor, I know that Mr. Kirkby and the individual did meet on site, and Mr. Kirkby had sent a text to identify what he would think about doing in terms of moving forward as a good neighbor, sort of keeping the low profile, moving the driveway away from her property, and providing some sort of a drainage swale that would help facilitate any drainage that presently would roll onto her property. And overall, to me, the comments sort of reflect the fact that while Mr. Kirkby is moving forward with a semi-detached, it's the overall development, I guess, of the area. That's sort of my take on it. Anyways, that would conclude what I have to say, and would respectfully request committee remove the requirement for the wetland assessment and approve the application. Thanks.
All right, thank you for that, Mr. Dennis. Comments or questions from council? Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thanks, Chair Stone, through you to Madeline. The picture you have of the aerial view.
Yeah.
Well, I just wonder if Lanny would be able to use a cursor and show us exactly where his pictures were taken on there, up the hill.
Sure.
Somewhere right about anywhere from, I don't even see the stream.
Yeah, I can't see it there.
I think it's back there.
If it's helpful, Chair Stone, I can pull up the interactive mapping, and we can pull up where the stream and wetland are identified on the mapping.
Sure, go ahead.
It's right there. It's right there.
Yeah. Do you want
Yes,
the
you can.
mapping up? Okay. Sorry, maybe just for IT, if we want to just stop sharing the screen. Thank you.
I don't know.
Sure, go ahead.
It's also shown, and this was in the report, it does show the stream location.
Right.
So anyways, it's quite a ways away.
It's not on the sidewalk.
No, not anywhere close.
I'm learning our GIS mapping is absolutely amazing, and so is the district's GeoHub. Just truly amazing.
I just think for accuracy, if you have a copy of that sketch that's in the report, you can't get much better than that. It's done by a surveyor, so, yeah.
Okay, I have it up.
Beautiful.
There we go. Thank you.
That's the stream there.
So the yellow is deer wintering area, just that way everybody knows. And then the green at the bottom is the identified wetland, and the blue is the cold water stream.
So down in here is where the photos were taken, and then you sort of work your way up to the top of the bank. I have no idea what that is.
Sloping.
Is that steep slope? Well, that's top of bank then here. So I don't know, there's no wetland in there that I can see.
Deputy Mayor Armour, are you
Thank you very much for
satisfied?
that. Yes, that's much better. I just wanted to see where that wetland was, because it looks to me like it doesn't even touch those lots you're talking about.
All
I
right.
just
Councillor
wanted to
Cloutier?
confirm that.
Through you, Chair. Just one small question. I see in the photos that you sent us here, I see a fire hydrant. Where is that adjacent? Would that be adjacent to the driveways or lot lines or whatever?
It's 37 feet to the center of the hydrant from the east lot line. So it's right in the middle of those two lots.
So it's in the middle of the, so it's in the middle of the two lots, so there's no fear of someday you coming back to us and saying we have to move it?
Right in the center of the two lots.
Okay, thank you, that's all I have.
Right on. Councillor Renwick.
Thank you, Councillor Stone. And my question is to Madeline, and it's more of an overview of, I was surprised that you can go from 65-meter frontage on a road down to 11 meters. Is that new? Like, is that to be able to go to such a small frontage on property or on a road?
Madeline?
Yes, through you, Chair Stone, to Lena. So the lot was existing already, which would have given it that 65-meter frontage. However, in the zoning bylaw, let's say, so because they're proposing the semi-detached dwelling on those properties, they're permitted the lesser frontage of 11 meters. If they were going for a new residential lot for a single detached dwelling, then it would be 15 meters. But as part of the urban residential precincts, the lot frontages are smaller. But it's due to the fact that this lot was existing prior.
Sorry, Chair Stone, just to follow up then, I can understand that road, Chaffee Township Road, is becoming more developed. Wow.
The hell's that?
Something's going on upstairs. And you know, more traffic happening on that road as well. So I'm aware of, you know, the neighbors' concerns and complaints. And being within the active transportation, you know, we've been talking about the amount of traffic that happens along that road. So very aware of that, but thank you for answering that question. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair Stone. I'll be voting to approve the application, but just again, I want to remind council, we're approving lots on a road that is very problematic, that we all know that there's issues on. So just a general reminder that we need to seriously consider capital road improvements for that area. I know it's being brought to the Active Transportation Committee, but just a general reminder. I know we all know that. And also, I don't think I would have a problem waiving the wetland assessment. I don't really think it's an issue for the lots that are being severed.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair Stone. I was prepared to move the motion. I'm happy to second the motion, and I'm happy with removing the clause for a wetland study, too.
All right, thank you. Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair Stone. I think I'm happy to approve as well. And I appreciate the comments from Councillor Clark with respect to another development on Chaffee. So I think we need to once again reiterate that. That's good. But I do have a question for Madeline with respect to the waiving of the wetland. You had it in there for a reason, and I just would love to hear your response to waiving it.
Madeline?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair Stone. So development is, when we think of lot creation, sometimes we miss that as actually meaning development. So within the CPP bylaw, any development within a wetland requires a technical assessment. So because our mapping, although it's great, it's awesome, our mapping, but it's not entirely accurate. So where that wetland truly lies, it's kind of a little bit of a question. So that's why we would have wanted to bring in a qualified professional to at least let us know where that is.
Might I ask you myself, so if we do choose to not have the study done, would there be mitigation measures that you would insist upon of the applicant moving forward?
Yeah, so through you, Chair Stone, to answer that question, the applicant would require meeting a 30-meter setback from the identified wetland, and any vegetation removal within that would require a community planning permit, or if there were proposing to develop within 30 meters of that, they would require a community planning permit application. However, if they're further than 30 meters away, they don't require a community planning permit application.
All right, thank you. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair Stone. A question through you to Madeline. Planning has done that in many cases where they determine what needs to happen and it comes up with a site plan arrangement. So I think that I trust my planning department to do it without the study. It seems onerous.
Any other comments or questions? All right, I will read the original motion.
Sorry, Chair Stone. I just wanted to echo Jason's point. If you wanted to, and I don't know if this is maybe
Go ahead.
going overreaching, but if you wanted planning to review the application prior to them getting building permits, right now they don't require a community planning permit if they can stay further than 30 meters. But if you wanted to, we could add a 5126 agreement that they are required a community planning permit application before getting building permits regardless. So I just wanted to put that out there as an option.
Thank you.
But yeah.
No, I appreciate that. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Just a follow-up question to Lanny, I guess. Lanny, how far are we away from the feature as identified by the applicant? And don't give it to me in feet. Or
Lanny?
get your calculator out.
In
Go ahead.
feet, so from where I see the wetland feature being probably about 40 meters or so. Like, I guess I don't quite understand the logistics or the mechanics of the CPP neither, because your bylaw says we have to be 30 meters away. So I'm not offending the 30 meters. We can meet the 30 meters without question. If I was coming closer, then I can see the necessity of having to do the study, but I'm not. And there's no doubt in my mind that we're gonna meet the 30 meters on
All
this
right, I'm
property.
going to go to Director Maxwell.
Thank you, Chair Stone. Just to provide a little bit more context to it, is that there are policies in the official plan that require that development be located outside of wetlands and also a specific distance from them. As was shown on the aerial mapping that Madeline pulled up, the wetland boundary that's identified on the mapping is, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 meters into the rear of the lots in question. So as long as they're maintaining that and going 30 meters beyond there, then I don't think there would necessarily be an issue. But if there was any question about coming closer, then they would need to define where that wetland boundary was. So.
All right. Comments or questions? Councillor Fitzgerald again.
Final comment. I think it's expedient of us to send a message and to help the developers that are bringing housing to our community, and to hold it up when I don't feel it's necessary to hold it up, to go through the CPP process or to go through the expense of studies. So this is an opportunity, and we get presented with it several times through applications at this committee, where we can expedite things. So I think this is one of those times.
Okay. I'm going to read the original motion. Moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Deputy Mayor Armour. Be it resolved that the Planning Council approve consent applications B0809 2023 HTE for the creation of 2 new residential lots, conditional on a registerable description of the severed lot being submitted to the clerk, including all rights of ways and easements, along with a registered copy of the reference plan. The owner's taxes being in good standing, a site inspection fee of $255 being paid to the town of Huntsville, consent finalization fee in the amount of $200 being paid to the town of Huntsville, 5% cash in lieu of parkland being paid to the town of Huntsville on the severed land, removal of the detached garage, the lands being subject to an agreement with the District Municipality of Muskoka pursuant to Section 5126 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, as amended, respecting district servicing, and a wetland assessment being completed by a qualified professional to the satisfaction of the town of Huntsville to determine the boundaries of the wetland and identify appropriate buffer widths and other mitigation measures. All right, and we have a motion to amend. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that the following condition be removed. Number 8, a wetland assessment being completed by a qualified professional to the satisfaction of the town of Huntsville to determine the boundaries of the wetland and identify appropriate buffer widths and other mitigation measures. Any discussion? All in favor of the amendment? All in favor of the main motion as amended? And that's carried.
Thank you very much, Wayne, for your time.
Thank you. All right. We're getting there. Kelsey is speaking to the CRIPS application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, the subject property is located at 510 Stevenson Road 2 East. The property is designated rural and is within the official plan and rural precinct with a natural to constraint overlay. The purpose and effect of the consent applications is to create 3 rural residential lots. Severed lot 1 would have 134 meters of frontage and approximately 2.7 hectares an area. Severed lots 2 and 3 would have approximately 134 meters of frontage on Max Road and approximately 2.5 hectares of area. And the retained lot would have 185 meters of frontage on Stevenson Road 2 East and an area of approximately 2.5 hectares. So this is the first severed lot, second, third, and the retained, which has existing development on the property. The rural precinct requires a minimum lot frontage of 134 meters of front area, 134 meters, sorry, it's a lot of numbers, and 4 hectares in area. As the severed and retained parcels do not meet this area, a CPP amendment will be required to change the precinct from rural to rural residential, which is a condition of the consent. For lots with multiple road frontages, such as the retained lot, and you can kind of see on this picture here, it's on the corner, there's Stevenson Road to East and then Max Road. So the retained property has 2 frontages, and how it's determined is the shortest lot line abutting the road. So the retained, the shortest lot line when it's severed will be on Max Road, which is 123 meters of frontage, which does not comply with the rural residential requirements. So through the amendment, we'll also need to recognize the Stevenson Road 2 frontage as the frontage for the lot, so it meets that requirement through the amendment. There are steep slope areas on the property, more towards the back, but based on the site visit, development of the severed properties would not appear to be impacted by this natural constraint. There is also a budding aggregate operation through the Fowler's Construction Company. The official plan states where new sensitive land uses are proposed within 300 meters of a pit operation or 500 meters of a quarry operation. A technical report is required. In support of this application, a noise feasibility study was prepared by GHD, which is dated January 20th, 2023. The report concluded that the potential vibration from the operation of the quarry are unlikely to impact the proposed development. However, it's recommended that while noise levels are not anticipated, that there be a warning clause on any agreement that a potential resident for potential residents within a 5126 agreement, which is a condition of the consent. The official plan details that new development proposed within 500 meters of an operating or identified non-operating waste disposal site or potential influenced area as identified by the province and District of Muskoka. A technical report will be prepared to the satisfaction of the town. In this instance, the subject property is within 500 meters of a D4 area. An earlier evaluation of the identified dump site was completed by Azimuth for the District of Muskoka, and the 500 meter influence area was scoped. Proposed development on the severed Lot 1 is directed outside of this identified area, as discussed in the planning justification report. Therefore, the proposed severance does not appear to impact this constraint. The application was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. The district has no objection, provided the recommendations of the studies are implemented. 5 letters of support were forwarded for this application, in addition to comments from the Fowler construction aggregate operations that's abutting it about the noise and vibration, which were addressed. Through staff's review and analysis, the application would appear to conform with intent of the official plan and be consistent with the provincial policy statement, and therefore staff are recommending provisional approval. Thank you so much, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Very much. I'll call on the applicant to make any comments about this.
Hi, I'm Rob Green from Telek Engineering, 80 Main Street West. Behind me is Tony and Shelley Ann Cripps, the owners of the property. I'd like to thank Kelsey for her statements here. I agree and concur to approve it, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Perfect. All right. I love the short ones. All right. Council, any comments or questions about the application? Councillor Fitzgerald, oh, he's...
No, just one question, Kelsey. I was under the impression the zoning was just, was pit there. It's quarry and pit, the neighboring property?
Sorry, just want to make sure it's on. Thank you for the question through you, Mr. Chair. It used to be M5, and I think it's just aggregate under our new precinct, but it can be for a pit or quarry. There's not specified, but the provision says 300 meters from a pit and 500 meters from a quarry. So it's currently the one that's abutting this. These properties isn't operational, but if it's designated, not designated, zoned, or within a precinct, then we have to enforce those studies.
Okay. Is that some homework we have to do on our precinct? Because I think that's just pit. I don't think it's extractive. Quarry.
If I can clarify.
Okay, absolutely.
Thank you, through you, Chair, Mr. Chair. So we would have information on whether the license is issued for a pit or a quarry. So we would look at the Aggregate Resource Act license to figure out which applies in this instance, and then we would apply the appropriate screening zone, 300 meters or 500 meters, based on what that operation is. So we have that information.
Okay. So I wasn't sure whether it was a 300 meter or 500 meter.
Kelsey?
So thank you for the question. So the current operation that's next to the site is not operating, but they did the highest standards, and that's what Fowler says. So even if it was to act as a quarry, they said it would be okay, because there's not currently an operation on that site. So they do it to the highest standard. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm going to let this one go. I support the application.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Renwick.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and through you to Kelsey. And again, because I'm new to this and I'm still learning about planning, my question is, when it has 2.1 acres on, let's say, on that first lot, that's just, it's not the entire area, is it just the workable land that's, or the land that could be used for residential area, correct? Or dwelling?
Yes, thank you for the question, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, they had a couple of sketches in there, and this one showed the topography more, which I liked, but it doesn't show the whole lot area, and it is conforming with the standard of 2 hectares. So it meets our policy. I think they were just showing the developable area away from that natural constraint. Yeah.
All right. I'll read the motion. Moved by Councillor Morrison, seconded by Councillor Clark. Be it resolved that Planning Council approve consent applications B 4546, 2022 HTE for the creation of 3 new rural residential lots, conditional on a registerable description of the severed lots being submitted to the clerk, including all rights of ways and easements, along with a registered copy of the reference plan. The owner's taxes being in good standing, site inspection fee of $255 being paid to the town of Huntsville, A consent finalization fee in the amount of $200 being paid to the town of Huntsville, 5% cash in lieu of parkland being paid to the town of Huntsville on the severed lands, an amendment to the community planning permit bylaw, 2022-97, being approved for the lands from rural to rural residential, and the owner entering into and registering on title of both the severed and retained lands, an agreement with the town of Huntsville pursuant to Section 5126 of the Planning Act RSO 1990, as amended to ensure that the purchasers and tenants are advised that due to the proximity of a nearby industrial facilities, noise from the facilities may at times be audible. Comments or questions? All in favor? And that's carried. All right, Director Maxwell is going to tell us how Bill 97 is going to improve our world.
Thank you, Chair Stone. So this report was a consolidation of all and written with the input of all of the directors of planning for the area municipalities in the district. So it was a team effort, and everybody did a great job, I have to say. And that might be why the resolution is a bit different, because we are, as a group, recommending that the towns that don't have the CPP bylaw all be permitted or legislated, prescribed to have site plan control within the waterfront designation again, because that was a big change with one of the previous acts that the province put in place. So there's a lot of information that was provided, and some of it is still not entirely clear, which seems to be a theme with the provincial changes we've seen over the last year. We have to wait and see what the actual implications are going to be of some of the things they've proposed. But the items that are supported by the group are reinstating site plan control along the shorelines, which is wonderful. Ensuring that municipalities have an opportunity to require a specific number of parking spaces for primary residences. As one of the previous, in Bill 23, they said we couldn't prescribe more than one parking space for every secondary residential unit. So as long as we have the ability to do that for the primary residents, that's good as well. But there are a significant number of concerns with what's been proposed as well. The first one is the ability to expand settlement areas and boundaries without having to go through a comprehensive review. It's a significant undertaking to expand boundaries normally. And I know that the information provided talks about all of Muskoka in general, but we have significant numbers of vacant lands, some draft approved, but some not. I off the top of my head, I think we've probably got about 800 acres of vacant land within the urban boundary already. So there is no need to expand that at this point. So it's going to be very challenging for the planning team as well as council to decide whether or not it's appropriate to expand it in a corner, because a developer is looking to put a subdivision there as compared to within our already identified boundaries. So, and from a water and sewer perspective, it's going to be even more challenging, I think. Another item of concern, and I think we've talked about this pretty significantly when we were doing our OP review up until 2019, but the ability to have multiple residential lot development in the rural areas. Right now, our official plan allows us to do a rural, I can't remember what we call it, vacant estate residential subdivisions in the rural area that are privately serviced, but not communally serviced, so that every lot would have its own individual well and septic system. But it appears that there might be the potential to have private communal water and sewer systems in rural areas, which is very challenging from a district perspective, because as they are the body that has to ensure that everybody has potable water, the potential for them to have to take over a system if it fails in the future, it's extremely costly. So that's a big deal. Another item is the conversion of commercial and institutional buildings for residential uses, which on the face of it seems like it might be a good thing, but we wouldn't want that in our downtown core necessarily. We would still want the opportunity to have commercial to a certain extent, or industrial lands as well. So right now, the way our bylaw is written is that the main floor in the downtown area has to be commercial. And if these changes come into effect, it's possible that that wouldn't be the case anymore. So it's just, we'd have to be really careful with what we do in the future. Another aspect was changing the definition of employment lands and how they would work. We don't really have the same issues in Muskoka as there are in other areas when it comes to employment lands. In southern Ontario, there's areas that are just specifically defined as employment lands, whereas we have sort of mixed use more than truly employment lands. But it would be different. And I think I'd mentioned at the last general committee meeting about the potential to appeal interim control bylaws. It's not something we've used. I think there's been one that I'm aware of that we used in Huntsville when the Empire Hotel burnt down. Council passed an interim control bylaw, enable us to put in place a community improvement plan so that we could define how the main street should be developed. And so that was the only one I think we've used. But if there's a potential for people to appeal it, then it's not an effective tool anymore. So the compatibility policies talk about, areas that we wouldn't want to have sensitive uses approaching, like airports and rail yards and sewage treatment plants, unless there's an identified need for the use. So that's something that the district would have more concerns with our treatment plants that are just outside of town as well. The fee refund potential, this doesn't really affect Huntsville anymore because we've got the community planning permit system, but it was applications that aren't processed within the prescribed timelines. The applicant could ask for a refund of their fees. Zoning amendments would be the only ones that we would still potentially have concern with. Agricultural lands, there is a potential for more lot creation for residential uses within agricultural areas. And again, in the Muskoka context, not as significant, but province-wide. I was at a meeting a few weeks ago, and they noted that this policy could result in the loss of 148,000 acres of prime agricultural lands as it stands. So from a local food perspective and all those other things, that's significant for Ontario. And finally, rural lands in municipalities. There's uncertainty surrounding what types of dwellings would be permitted. Currently, all of our cottages and shoreline waterfront designation are all considered rural lands in the PPS, and that's the only, one of the only rationales as to why they were allowed to develop the way they are. So depending on those changes, we could have issues as to whether or not people would be living in them year-round, although I know now when they apply for a building permit, people say, no, it's just a cottage and I'm not going to be living there year-round, but then they convert them. And so it ends up being more of an issue for municipalities in the long run when it comes to being asked to provide services. So, high-level overview. Happy to answer any questions if I can.
Are there any questions? Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and thank you, Kirsten, for, I think it's a great report, really thorough, and it's neat that it's done in collaboration. I have two questions, and I maybe start with the first one is around multi-lot residential development in the rural area. And I think I like the way you framed it with respect to communal servicing. Having said that, I think that what the group is saying is if there was a proposal for a tiny home community in our rural area, that clearly if they're proposing to have communal servicing, clearly not on. But if there was a proposal that maybe there'd be one septic per 2 tiny homes or something like that, your comments that you have here would suggest that we wouldn't consider that. Am I correct? Or are we still open to, I guess that's where I'm looking. Are we a little bit flexible? I like the way you're referencing the communal servicing. We've had issues with that before. But if there was a proposal that was trying to do something that was different, and we know that there are groups that would like to maybe develop a tiny home community, 10 tiny homes or whatever, in lands that are available, are we saying because of this that no, not considering it?
Honestly, it is a tough one because it would entirely depend on what the province implements and then what changes are made through the Muskoka official plan and then consequently our official plan.
Right.
I think it would have to be evaluated based on the specific circumstances of whatever it was being proposed
Right.
and what the merits were as to why they wouldn't be providing their own individual water and sewer service for each parcel.
Cost,
So,
you know, so,
yeah.
but I appreciate that answer, and I just, I get why you're putting it here, it is a major concern, but I would hate to, and, you know, these are comments, and they're going, and whether they listen to them or not is a whole other thing, so, but I just kind of wanted to have that engagement so that I know that around this table, if we discuss anything like that, that we're still open for that discussion.
Will you be asking that at the district, at the CAPS meeting?
I will.
Will you? Okay.
I will
I
absolutely
will watch
ask.
that part to
I
see
will
what,
ask.
yeah.
I will absolutely, and thank you for reminding me, I will, because it will be at CAPS next week, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Renwick.
Thank you, Chair Stone. Thank you for the report, and I actually enjoyed reading this report, and I was really happy to see that the 9 comments that have been made, or the 9 recommendations. There were a number of them that I thought were excellent, and that we have to be very careful going forward, that if we don't look at these, that our landscape will certainly change. I was really surprised to see that we have 5,843 residential units. So there's, and a lot of vacant lots, 2,822 vacant lots. So we've had a lot of speculation of developers buying up land but not doing anything with it. Is that not a concern? It's been on for a long time, yes. I guess it's not really a comment. It's a comment, not a question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that is something that we've been discussing when we were talking about the water and sewer allocation through the district, that we have draft approved plans of subdivision. The one that is always at the top of mind is about 800 units that's been draft approved since the mid-90s. And there's been no action on it. And that is concerning because are they ever going to develop? Are they not? What do we do to try and spur them to either do it or to move on? Or yeah, but that is one of the focuses of the new water and sewer allocation discussions that are ongoing at district. And I think they're bringing a report. Hopefully, I don't know if it's this month or in June, but okay. So.
Any other questions? All right, we have a resolution, I believe. Moved by Councillor Renwick, seconded by Councillor Cloutier. Be it resolved that report number DEV 2023-61 be submitted to the joint comments of the District Municipality of Muskoka and the 5 participating area municipalities respecting the province's ongoing review of planning, policy, and legislation. And further, that a request being forwarded to the province to include the towns of Gravenhurst, Bracebridge, Township of Muskoka Lakes as prescribed municipalities, if required, for the purpose of proposed Section 41, subsection 2.1.2 of the Planning Act and associated regulation to permit the use of site plan with 120 meters of a shoreline and 300 meters of a rail line. Comments or questions? All in favor? And that's carried. All right. So there's staff delegations. I don't know, is anybody going to speak to any of those? No? All right then. We're at the end. Moved by Mayor Alcock, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that confirmation bylaw 2023-57 be received, numbered, and read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 10th day of May 2023. All in favor? And that's carried. One more. Moved by Deputy Mayor Armour, seconded by Councillor Renwick. Be it resolved that we do now hereby adjourn at 3:18 p.m. All in favor?